Okay, so today we're going to be trying out drag and drop. And it's a really powerful new API in iOS 11 that allows you to drag views either within your own application or from one application to another. And Apple spent a ton of time on it during WWDC. They had like 4 or 5 sessions. So they obviously put a lot of time into it. It's important to them, so it's something worth checking out. And today we're just going to go ahead and get started looking at the very basics. And we are going to start from scratch. This will probably take a couple sessions to fully work through. I haven't worked all the way through it myself, but I've got the basics down that I'm going to start going through with you guys. So we're going to create a new project. Make it a single view app. Drag and drop. Basics. I've got a folder where I put all the sample code from these sessions. Okay. So Apple did a really good job putting together slides, and I'm just going to go through a couple of them with you. Let's pull those out. Okay, so what is drag and drop? Basically, you can pick a view, drag it to either your own application or, in this case, it's another application, and drop it. Not only can you control the visual aspects of what's happening in the animations, you can also control the data that is passed along with it. They have their goals. Basically, it should be easy to use, should be powerful, should be secure, multi-touch. One restriction to note is if you're working with an iPad, then you can pass your views between the two screens. If you have a split screen or whatever, you can pass it between apps. If you're working with just an iPhone, you can still use drag and drop, but it's got to remain within your app. You can't go past data and these drag and drop things to other apps. So we have different phases of a drag session. You have a lift. It's kind of like the iMessage stickers. Like you do a long press on a view, and it peels up off the page, and then you can drag it around, and it hovers over the other views. So that's one phase, is the lift. Then you're dragging it around, and you set it down somewhere if you're allowed to, and then if you're allowed to set it down there and it's the target view is ready for it, you can transfer the data that's associated with it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to keep this really, really simple today. We're going to keep one view controller, and we're going to set up both the drag source and the drag target all in the same view controller, just with its own subviews. Okay. So nothing fancy right now. We're just going to drag a couple views out, add them into the view controller. I'm not even going to use auto layout this time. I'm literally just going to drag them out. So I don't want to focus on things that aren't relevant. So we'll just give it a light gray color. And I'm going to pull another view over here. Get that one a different color. So these are just going to be like the drag. We're going to be dragging from this view up here. We're going to be dragging to this view down here. That'll be the source. So let's add one more sub view, and we'll make that a red box, just so it stands out visually. And we're not going to add anything down here at all, but we are going to add a label. So we're going to prove that we can pass some data around and update a label. Make it nice and big. Okay. Nothing fancy so far. We haven't implemented any protocols, done anything other than sort of iOS 101. Wait a second here. Let me get my simulator up here. Okay, as you can see, we have a bunch of DOM views. These two gray views are subviews of the view controller's view, and this red view is a subview of this dark gray view up here. Okay, so we are going to make a couple of outlets. So we'll make outlets for the drag source view. And the drop source view. Okay. So we have, oh, we might as well do our label now too. Test label. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to start by, I want to be able, our first goal is to be able to long press on this red box, pick it up, and drag it around, kind of like the iMessage stickers. And the way we're going to get started with that is we are going to conform to UI drag interaction delegate. So we're going to make an extension, view controller, and it's going to conform to UI drag interaction delegate. All right, let's check that sucker out and see what's required. Provide items to begin a drag. So there's a bunch of optional methods, but there's only one required method. Drag interaction, items for beginning session, and it returns an array of drag items. So let's see. Provide items to begin drag. If these items represent things that are displayed in a linear order, provide them in the same order, first to last. If an empty array is returned, the drag will not begin. So we've got to do drag interaction, items for beginning. Let's go ahead and get started with that. We'll go get rid of our assistant editor. Oh yeah, starting with the latest version of Xcode, if you just tap on this this error icon here, you can actually get the stubs. This is really nice. So, as it said in the documentation, we can return an empty array, and that we are not conforming, but we're still not going to be able to drag. So let's go ahead and confirm that. We're just going to build this whole thing up piece by piece. Okay, long pressing, nothing's happening. Okay, so looks like we need to create a drag item, and we need to set ourselves up. So before we create this drag item, we're now conforming, so at least that's working. We're gonna have to set up on our view a drag interaction. Okay, so we just want to do one of those, and this is really similar to like a gesture recognizer. So let drag interaction equal UI drag interaction, and it takes a delegate and since we're conforming now, even though it's not doing anything, we'll call ourselves the delegate. And then we're going to start off keeping this really simple. We're just going to add to the drag source view. We're going to add an interaction, and that's going to be our drag interaction. Okay. So now that part is set up. So this is this follows the same patterns as like UI dynamics, a couple other things where you add something to a view and it retains it, and it's going to go ahead and handle that for you. So again, we don't expect this to be draggable right now because we're not returning an array of drag items. And we'll figure out what that is in a minute. But let's make sure I'm long pressing, and yeah, nothing's happening. So in order to get this to work, we're going to have to create a drag item. So let's check that guy out. A representation of an underlying data item being dragged from one location to another. Okay, so let's create one. So it is composed of an item provider. So item provider equals NS item provider. We're going to give it an object that conforms to NS item provider writing. We'll look at that in a second. But we're just going to start off really, really simple. We're going to give it a string, actually an NS string, because it has to be an object. Hello world, why not? As NS string. And the reason it has to be NS string is you can't use, it has to be an object underneath. Let's go ahead and look at that. Oops, sorry about that. Let's go ahead and look at that protocol. That's not helpful. NS item provider writing. All right, let's look at that guy. NS item provider writing. The interface for supporting initialization of an item provider based on an object used by a source app and providing copied or dragged items. Okay, so we have like NS string, attributed string, URLs, colors, and images all automatically support this. Okay, so that's why we're casting the NS string. It has to be an object, and it automatically supports NS item provider writing. Okay. Now we have our provider, and then with that provider, now we're able to create a drag item. So let's create a drag item. Let drag item equal UI drag item, and its designated initializer is giving it an item provider, which we have. And we're going to turn an array with one drag item. So we're going to have one UI drag item in our array. Now, we should be able to drag our little red box. It's not working. What's going on? So we have view did load, drag interaction, drag source view, add interaction. Yeah, that's right. UI drag interaction delegate, items for beginning. That's right. Check it again. What's going on with that? Let's try it on an iPad. I had been testing on an iPad simulator before. I wonder if that's going to have any difference. Ah, okay. Strange. Okay. You're going to have to look into that. I don't know why it worked, at least on the simulator, with... Yeah, interesting. Okay, so there's a couple things, there's a lot of things wrong, but we can see that we're able to pick up our view and drag it around. we can't really drop it anywhere. We can drop it, it fades away, and that works, but it's not actually doing anything right now. So there's a couple things we can do to clean that up. But what I'd like to do first is just get dropping to work as well. So let's go ahead and just view it. First of all, let's just view it like this. And let's do a couple quick cleanup things here, because that drives me kind of nuts. Okay, so yeah, let's just start with getting dropping to work right now. So I'm going to have to get better at figuring out how to turn notifications off. We're going to do something very similar. We're going to add a drop interaction to our drop source view. So we're going to say let drop interaction equal UI drop interaction. So we're not conforming yet, but we'll figure that out in a second. And our drop source view dot add interaction drop interactions. Very, very similar, but we're going to get a complaint. Yeah, because we are not conforming right now. Oh, what happens if we do this? Ah, no, we don't want to do that. Okay, so let's come down and let's conform. We'll say extension, uController, UI drop interaction delegate. And let's find out. Oops, yeah, I've done that before too. I conformed within the extension, which you can't do. That was an accident. Okay, let's see. I think they're all optional. Yeah, let's just take a look at this real quick. Yeah, all the methods on the drop interaction delegate are optional. Okay. But since we're not implementing any of them, we can go, but it's not going to do much. Drag it around, we're going to drop it, but nothing happens. So so our goal here is that we're passing data with this view, and its data is a string and it's hello world. So what I want to happen is I want, when I pick this up, lift it, move it, drop it over this drop zone here, that we update this label to say hello world. So that's our kind of short-term goal here. And we're going to implement that the easiest way possible first with the following method. We're going to say drop interaction perform drop. Okay. And we're also going to do drop interaction session did update. Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple things we let's go back and fix this in 1 second. Drop interaction can handle. All right, so let's start with can handle. So what we want to be able to do is return true for just a second. So we want to be able to tell the system, we want to tell the session, hey session, you are hovering over me right now with a potential series of items, drag items. Will I allow you to drop them on me? And if you do, can I handle them, right? So you can just blindly say yes or no, or you can, like, there's probably certain types of drag items that you can handle and certain ones that you can't. So you might be a photo sharing app and you only want to return yes if it's a photo, if it's a certain type of photo, or if it's a string, or if you're making an audio player, right? You only want to take MPEGs or whatever. So we're going to use this method called session. We're pulling the session out of the parameter here, and we're going to say can load objects NSString.self. So what we're saying here, let's take a look at this one. Returns true if there's at least one drag item in the drop session that can create an instance of the specified class. So we're telling the session, return yes as long as you have one or more items that are NS strings. That's all we're saying here. Okay. Now we're going to do something called a drop proposal. So we're going to start with return, just to get it to stop yelling at me, UI drop proposal operation.copy. Okay, so what's going on here? Let's see, let's find what's the best way we can get it. Okay, so what's going on here is that we've said, okay, we can handle you. And now the session is going to ask us for a proposal. We can handle it, and we can handle it in a couple different ways. We can handle it by copying the data from the source and basically making a copy of whatever it is. We can do, and that's the most normal. That's the one that they recommend, especially if you're coming from another app. You have to copy the data over. You don't have the opportunity to move it. And if you do want to move it, you have to coordinate with the drag interaction delegate itself. So it's a little bit more complicated. We are going to start by just we'll look what's there. So you can cancel, copy. Cancel just means cancel this whole. If you drop it on me, we're just going to run cancel. Copy means copy the data to me, so make a copy. Move means move the data to me in coordination with the drag interaction delegate. Forbidden is something that Apple recommends you don't use very often. It is basically saying, normally you'd be allowed to do this, either a copy or a move, but in this particular scenario, you're not allowed to. Like if you're hovering a file over a private folder, you would do forbidden. So we're just going to start with copy. So we're going to say our drop proposal that we're going to return to the system is a operation of copy. Okay, and now we're going to actually get to the act of transferring that data. So we're going to say perform drop given this session, and the session holds all of our drag items, and those drag items have data in them. So here's how we're going to start off doing this with the convenience method. So session, we're going to load all the objects, and we're going to make sure in this case that they're strings. So load all the objects that are strings, and then in the completion handler, we're going to have a bunch of messages. And in this callback here, we're basically going to go ahead and do whatever we want to, take this data, update our UI, do whatever else we have to do with it. So we're going to say, let's see, let messages equal messages as an array of NS strings, excuse me. And then we're just going to update self.testLabel text is going to be, we're going to grab our first message as a string. It's unfortunate that we have to be going back and forth between strings and strings, but you know, what are you going to do? This is a convenience method because of a couple different things. One, you don't get an error back. You only get an array of objects, and it's called for you back on the main thread. So there's a more lower level, more sophisticated API if you want to do some processing or error checking, but you'll have to remember to go back to the main thread yourself. But we'll take a look at that in a minute. But we just want to get this sucker working. So let's go over it again. So we have, so as soon as the dragged item begins to hover over our area, our view, we're going to say, it's going to ask us, can you handle it? And we're going to say, given your session, do you have any objects of class NSString? No? Okay, can't handle it. Okay, I can't handle it. What's your proposal? I propose that we do a copy of the data from the source over to me. And then finally, that proposal is accepted. We are going to load all the objects from the session that are NSStrings, cast it down. We can force cast it here because we know it's an NSString, all right? And then we're going to take the very first message in the array, in this case there's only one anyways, and cast that as a string, and then update our test label with it. So let's see if all that works. Okay, we're going to drag. Now we're over it. So you see that little green circle with the plus? That's an indication that we're going to be doing a copy. So that's working. We're going to drop it. Boom. Hello world. Excellent. So that is the most bare bones thing you could possibly do, right? So that's great. That's a really great start. But we noticed a couple problems right off the bat. Like, one of them is when we are picking up here, if you don't tell the system what you want this draggable thing to look like, it's going to take a snapshot of your entire view, and it's going to go ahead and turn that into an image and use that to drag around. So we want to make that look a little bit nicer. So let's do that first. Okay, so we're going to go back to our drag delegate. And we're going to implement drag interaction, preview for lifting. All right, so our goal here is that we want to take control of what this, of that dragged view. We want to take control of what that thing looks like. So we're going to create an image. I got a couple dummy images loaded up here. So I have a hello world image, right, that looks a little bit better. So we're going to create an image view. Equals, let's see, UI image view, image, hello world. Okay, so there's our image view. Then we're going to create, we need to get a point, and we're going to, so there's two parts. Sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself there. We're going to be returning a UI targeted drag preview. So let's check out what that is. A drag item preview used by the system during lift, drop, or cancel. Let's take a little closer look at what's involved with it. We are going to initialize it with a view. set of parameters, and a target. UI drag preview targets. What is this? UI drag preview target specifies where a drag preview should come from or go to. Okay, so it is it's a location. And its designated initializer is a container with a center point and a transform. We're going to use the convenience method here. Okay, so let's get to it. So we have the first part of our targeted drag preview, which is the image or the view. Now we're going to say let drag view equal interaction.view. So this drag interaction has a view associated with it. That's what we're going to be using. And then let drag point equal session.location in drag view. Okay, so the session has a property that gives you a location, and you get that, and it returns a point, and it's the location inside with reference to a certain view. So it's going to be our drag view. So that's going to give us a point. I'm going to say let target the UI drag preview target is going to be container and a center. Okay, so our container is going to be our drag view, and our center is going to be our drag point. Finally, we just got to put those together. Instead of returning nil, we're going to say return UI targeted drag preview. I think we're going to do this one here. So that's going to be our image view that we created. The parameters, we're just going to return an empty set of parameters. UI drag preview parameters. And then our target's going to be our target. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like, and this is where it's going to get picked up from. Let's take a look. Okay, now we have our little nice image. So we're making it look like we want. Come down, we drop it, and there we go. It changes it up. Fantastic. Let's see, what else can we do with our drag interaction delegate? We can track it. Well, why don't we take a look at tracking it as it moves? Drag interaction, session did move, print session dot location in, we'll just do it in reference to just the whole view itself. So let's just see how that goes. So pick it up. Yeah, hold on. You can, so you can see in the simulator, it's printing out its X and Y location in respect to the view controller's main view as we're dragging it around. So if you need that information, that's how you get that. Yeah, so it doesn't clog up our console. You can add other things. You can add other views to your array of UI drag item views in the session. So we can say drag interaction, items for adding to. Okay. So what this is all about is as you are dragging around, if there's another view that you want to be able to add to this collection, so if you wanted to add, in this case, like a Hello World Bobby, you could tap with another finger on that view and you could add it on to the array of draggable items. It's a little hard to do in the simulator, so I'm not actually going to be demoing that. But basically, you would hit test. Let's see, where do you hit this? Hit test this. Oh, wait, this is the wrong method. I'm sorry. Drag interaction. With touch at point. Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is the one where you can tap another view and add it to your sessions array of drag items. So since we have a point here, we can just hit test the view. So something like it would be like drag source view dot hit test with at point for, don't worry about the event. And this will give us back an optional view. And with that optional view there, we can then create another drag item and pass it in this array, and then we'll have another item that's being dragged around. So like you could pick up a bunch of photos or a bunch of documents or a bunch of whatever. We're just not going to demo that here. Okay, what else do we have? We can find out when things ended. So drag interaction did end with operation. We have will end and did end. So, will end fires right before it ends, and did end tells you when it's all done. Interaction finished. Let's see when this guy gets called. Drag interaction finished. Okay. You can actually, so just because you made a proposal down here, just because you say you want copy or you say you want move, doesn't mean you're necessarily, especially if you say move, doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get it. So we can double check to see what we actually got. Drag interaction did end with, will end with, but well, either way. So will end with operation, and then you can operation UI drop operation as an enum, so you can switch on operation and basically figure out what actually happened, not just what the proposal was. Then there's a couple interesting ones. We can do some, we can adjust the UI while things are happening. Okay, sorry. So drag interaction will animate cancel with. Okay, so for example, you get an animator, one of the new iOS 10 animators, and if you're going to get a cancel, you can perform UI updates and animate them along with the system-driven animation for this thing. So we can take our animator, we can say add animations, and let's just keep it really simple. Let's be like self.view.background color equals red, you know, so something just obvious we can look at real quick. So if we get a cancel, the background color animates to red along with the disappearance of the draggable view. So that works for cancels. For now, let's take that out. And what's nice about that is it operates, it will run your animator at the same speed and the same curvature and everything as the system does with that that view that's animating around. So that's nice. We can also find out when the data transfer is completed. So we can say drag session did transfer items. Is transferred. And you know, for a simple thing like this where we're passing a string, this happens almost instantaneously. It doesn't really matter because there's other things you can check, like drag is done is pretty much just as good as session to transfer items. But if we're talking like audio files or things that have to be downloaded, this might happen significantly in the future, right? So let's check this out. We drag it over, we drop it, the data transfer happens, and when it's finished, all of the data is transferred. Sweet. We'll animate lift. Okay, I like this one. So this next one is going to go along with the will animate cancel. Probably should have done this one first. Drag interaction, will animate lift. So this, again, gives you access to the animator and allows your animations to run at the same speed as the lift animations. Okay, so we can do something like animator.add animations, and maybe we want to change view.alpha. Maybe we want the background views alpha to go down to like 0.7 while the dragging is happening, or some other view, right? Or you can do whatever you want, but this will animate that, whatever you want done, at the same speed as the lift itself. And then you're dragging it around, you drop it off, and right now it's staying at 0.7 because we didn't have a matching delegate call to set it back to normal, but we can do that later. So for now, cancel that out. Oh, and we get, let's see, we get a position here too, right? Oh yeah, okay. So we also get animator. Let's see. We're gonna have to experiment with this one. Dot add completion. Completion, UI view animating position. So this will give us the position at the completion, and it can be either start end or current. Let's just check it out. Switch on position. Current position, ending position, and the starting position. We're gonna skip this one for right now. No, we're not gonna skip it. Let's dive into it. Start. Let's just say self.view.background color equals .green. Case.end. Background color equals .orange. Current blue, just so we can see what it does. Okay. So we'll animate lift with Animator, and this is our completion handler. So completion handler gets fired. So it went to orange, so that was the end. Oh, the end of the lift. Okay. And because that one was that one we just canceled out. Oh, no, you know what it is? We never went outside the bounding box there. So that stayed orange. All right, this is going to have to be a to-do research one. Sorry about that. Let's see. That pretty much that's a pretty good review of what we can do with our drag interactions. We can do a little bit more with our drop interactions. Oh, there is one more drag interaction. Here. I talked before about having to coordinate with the drag interaction delegate if you're going to request a move, and this is the delegate method call. Session allows move operation. So, A, if it's within the same app. B, if your drop proposal is moved from the drop interaction delegate. And C, if the drag interaction delegate, if session allows move operation is overwritten and you return true because it's false by default. If all three of those things happen, then you can do a move instead of a copy. So if this was false and you're requesting move, it'll still work. It just won't be a copy. It won't be a move. It'll be a copy. So let's try it out real quick. Here we go. We're dragging it around. Oh, I thought it would still work. But because we're asking for a move and it said no, we didn't update that. So let's try that as true. Come down here. We request a move. Okay. So if you request a move as the drop delegate and the drag delegate says no, you don't even get a copy. You just get a cancel. That's good to know. I was not understanding that. So again, if this is false and this is copy, this should work because we're asking for a copy and by default, copies are allowed. Oops. Got a little overexcited there. Okay, that works. Yeah, okay, I think that's enough for that. We get a couple helper methods here, which is drop interaction, session did enter, and session did exit. So as you are where you enter, as soon as you enter that drag as soon as that drag item enters into, let's just do it in, as soon as the drag crosses the bounds into our drop source view, we're going to get this call right here. We can get the point. And as soon as it leaves, you know, if you're just someone's just like scrolling around and messing around, you can see when they go in and out, but don't actually try to make a drop. So let's try that. So as soon as we cross this threshold, did try to enter at 155.5, and then we'll move it over here, and we'll go out. Okay, I just have it saying exit, so we got the fact that it exited, but you can go in and out several times, and it'll keep getting called. So there's no guarantee that that'll just be called once. I will preview for dropping. You can also set a preview for dropping item. So I got a little sample code here. For your drop interaction, you can get a preview for for dropping. So basically, you can set up again another UI targeted drag preview. I didn't have any luck getting this to work myself, so I'm not going to go through it again right now. But in theory, either I'm doing something wrong or there's a problem with it. You should be able to control what the item looks like as it's being dropped. And then you have some more drop animation coordination stuff with the animator. So we'll animate drop with animator. So again, you can control the speed of your all the interactions, all the animations you want to be coordinated with the animator of this the drop. So let's take a okay, this is let's just make this a little more. Let's go. We'll go back to white, and then let's go up here, and we had it set to 7 here. We will make sure that it goes back to fully opaque after the drop. So you can see that the background is kind of grayed out, and then it animates back to full opacity with the drop, and that's due to this here. And finally, the last method, kind of interest for right now, is session did end, and this will tell you that the drop is done and our entire drag and drop session is over. We'll get called. We can just print this out. So that's pretty much it. So you can think of it largely as 2 different pieces of the puzzle. Your drag side, and you have the ability to control what the view looks like. You can set up 1 or more drag items to be dragging around. You can animate your interface along with the animation of lifting off. And then you have your drop side and your drop delegate, where you can control the types of drag items that you're willing to accept. You can control, again, the what happens to the data once it's dropped. And you can control animations like that and coordinate it along with the animator of the drop. And then there's some interplay between the two, and the session really mediates that. It can do things like the drop and drag delegate can work together to see if it's going to be a move or a copy. It mediates to find out what type of items are the drag items in its array. So there's coordination between the two, but you can really kind of separate out the drag and the drop side of things. Now, there's more to drag and drop. There are specialty APIs built into like UI table view, UI collection view, UI text view that I'd like to get into. We might do that later this week, but I think that's pretty good. That was almost an hour of drag and drop for now, and we'll pick it up soon. So let me know any comments or questions in the comments, and we will continue. Thanks.